Today on CityCast DC, the Walgreens in Chinatown has been hit by armed robbers 8 times in a year. This is a story that has seemed to be a symbol of Washington's worries about lawlessness. But this week, it took a crazy turn. Rather than a random crime, police now think it was an inside job. NBC4's Jackie Bensen is here to tell us what's in the court docs on this wild story. Today is Tuesday, February 20th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Hey, Jackie.
Hello, Mike.
So every now and then, I feel like a news story comes along, which is like tied to stuff that's actually big news, but also feels like it could be, like a ripped from the headlines Law and Order episode, or like a bad comedy movie with the robbers from Home Alone or something. And I think we're in it. Can you set the stage for us? This is the Walgreens in the middle of Chinatown.
As a person who's lived in cities my entire life, your Walgreens, your CVS, your place where you can go and get everything when maybe a grocery store isn't quite as close is precious to you. And that Walgreens is 3 levels of fabulousness. We're real happy to have it there. So when these armed robberies started happening, I think a lot of people who live in that neighborhood were quite worried.
It was treated as a sign of DC being a place that's in chaos and crime being out of control, and just sort of a broader danger about the city, the health of the city.
As our pharmacies and grocery stores go, so go the rest of us. And so I think when these robberies started happening at this Walgreens, people were afraid it was going to go the way of that CVS up in Columbia Heights, and it was going to be gone. These are amenities that make our lives better, and people do not like to see them descend into chaos and lawlessness.
So this had happened like once a month. They'd been getting hit by armed robbers. What were the robberies?
This is interesting. Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question. They weren't the type of thing where they were coming up and robbing the cashiers, like a bank robbery or something like that. They know that in these stores, what cash the store takes in is brought at the end of the day, and sometimes more than one time a day, to the manager's office, a secure area where you have to have a code to get in. They have always had security officers at that Walgreens because of its location. As these robberies went on, they started having armed security there, and that is how we get to what happened on Sunday, February 11th. But in between, there were 8 at least armed robberies, basically pacing out once a month since summer of 2023.
So that day, one of the robbers was shot.
After he had overpowered the first security officer, special police officers, what they're called here in D.C., they undergo firearms training. That's the equivalent of police officers. He had taken away the first security officer's gun, and that is the gun that he used to continue on with the robbery, and then was shot by the second special police officer.
So at the time, this was treated as like, news. Well, robbers stopped, shot by security guard. And then 2 days later, the twist happens. Police arrest the manager of the store.
The young man who was arrested, and I say that because he's 24.
The young man, the robber, meaning?
Yes. Kamani Williams is his name. He's only 24.
And he had been shot.
He had been shot, but he had his cell phone with him. Think about the treasure trove of evidence that police were able to recover from his cell phone.
And what did it show?
Oh, it showed that he had been in contact with 2 people. The foremost one, right before and right after these robberies, was the manager of that very same Walgreens and the manager's nephew. They were able to go back through a dump of his phone and also remembered geo-tracking. So they were able to say he was here at that time. He was at the manager's apartment building not far away just before the robberies. And they were also able to, I don't know if you've seen, there's in the court documents, there's a security camera image from the hallway right outside the manager's office because it's got a keypad to keep it secure, of him looking at his phone punching in the code to the manager's office.
There's a new play at Gala Theater in Columbia Heights, and this one sounds really interesting. Cristina Garcia's gripping play, The Palacios Sisters, is a Latinx adaptation of Chekhov's Three Sisters, and it captures the vibrant chaos of 1985 Miami. Three sisters and their brother, who recently arrived from Havana, navigate Miami's treacherous landscape filled with drug wars and rampant violence. It's a story of challenged family bonds, resilience, and longing. Check out the world premiere in Spanish with English surtitles, also known as supertitles, at Gala Theater this month. The show is running through February 25th. For more information and tickets, visit galatheater.org. Once again, that's galatheater.org.
So, based on what the charging documents say, how did they do this? He's only been arrested, the manager, for being involved in 4 robberies, but there were 8, about 1 a month on his watch, and he was present for the other 4. The documents suggest that he might have been in on those too, but the ones that they do charge him with being in on, how did he supposedly do it?
He essentially had 2 people, okay? So it looks to me like his nephew, the manager's nephew, is the wheelman. There is a white Mercedes involved that the suspect who was shot, we're going to call him the robber, Kamani Williams, alleged robber, he was brought to an area near there in this vehicle, driven by the nephew of the manager. So that is throughout these documents, the mentioning this white Mercedes observed in the area, and that it was actually registered to the manager's girlfriend.
I mean, you cover crime more than I do, but this doesn't sound like America's sharpest alleged criminals here.
They had 8. 8 in there. And I know the FBI and DC police were working on this. I strongly suspect by how quickly they were able to put together this incredibly detailed affidavit in support of arrest that they were going to get there, eventually. But Kamani Williams getting shot by the security officer speeded this thing up tremendously and put him at the scene. This is quite a case, and they are facing quite serious federal charges.
So one thing that was crazy in these documents was in one of the earlier robberies that the store manager has not been charged with. The store manager, was present, and he was apparently hit with a gun in the head. Like the butt of a gun was used to hit him in the head during this robbery. At the time, it looked like he was, injured on the job, but maybe not.
That would not be the first time in my experience with this that I have seen someone be tied up by the robber who was a participant, an inside participant in a robbery. And there have been cases where people have shot themselves in the leg to make it look like they were also shot in an incident where someone close to them, perhaps a spouse, was shot and killed.
So how much did they allegedly steal in total?
I have not had a chance to go through the entire document, but I know that in the one from November, I believe they said it was $7,700. And I also know, and I do believe that this is in there somewhere, or it's been my experience with things like that, that if you're the store manager, you absolutely know the day of when the most cash is in there before it gets picked up by the armored car or whatever. And that is likely another thing that law enforcement was looking at is why is it, we know from the store what day their armored car drop is. Why was it always the day before or the day, earlier in the day of when that was supposed to happen?
Yeah, this guy has the worst luck, right?
But it went on for a year through the time where the people who shop there, that's their neighborhood, that's their store. They felt less safe because of what was going on there.
So DC police have recently particularly rolled out this big focus on fighting crime in Chinatown. They announced a new substation there, a safe commercial corridor hub, they call it. And the mayor has said repeatedly that the crime wave has ebbed and is actually a product of a very small number of people. How does this arrest and this conspiracy play into that storyline, right after the Caps and Wizards have announced they're leaving and so on?
The timing, certainly, I did a story a year ago, perhaps a little less, where Ted Leonsis made it very clear he was not happy with the level of crime around Chinatown. And we will notice that that community center that has law enforcement, public safety services, I believe was established after the announcement that the wizards and caps were leaving. But I do think the mayor made a very good point, and the police chief made a very good point about these arrests, that this was at least 8 armed robberies, even in a big city. That is a huge statistic of crime in that neighborhood, and to have it tied to the same people backs up that theory a bit.
So the store manager, Mr. Robinson, he is, according to Walgreens, no longer employed there, which is maybe the least surprising firing I can think of. What kind of time is he facing, is his nephew facing, and is the robber who was shot facing?
It is federal. I do not know the sentencing guideline, but in the federal system, remember, they do not have parole. You do the whole time.
And the fact that we now know that he wasn't really going to shoot the guy because the guy was in on it, is that actually going to be a mitigating factor?
I don't think so.
That would take some nerve for a lawyer to make that argument.
Because remember, this is not for assault with intent to kill. This is federal charges, which they're facing for armed robbery. This is the kind of thing that people go to prison for a long time. And, the U.S. attorney, we have seen that office putting together some more of these cases where it's not just the thing that so many residents of the District of Columbia, and I can tell you Maryland too, and Virginia, have complained about the slap on the wrist, the conviction for, assault with intent to kill, and you're out in 18 months. This is serious time if they are convicted. And again, there is no parole in the federal system. If it's 10 years, you do 10 years. If it's 20 years, you do 20 years.
Jackie, thank you for being here.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, subscribe to our morning newsletter, or leave us a review. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.